Welcome back, all of you. In this lesson, we will cover about project definition and workload. Because what we started is why this course? Because we have a lot of resources, but somebody has to connect the dots between all these things. That's a course for you. A short, crisp, very effective for you if you're looking at a career as a builder or an architect with AWS. Second point is we looked at what was who is an architect. So don't miss the piece of trying to get into tools, but look at it like it's a personality. It's about everything. We covered that in the video. Now we are getting into understanding project definition and workload, because end of the day you're going to solve a customer problem. Customer is going to throw a challenge. It's going to be a problem. It could be transactional, or you could be an enterprise architect or building a roadmap. It could also be something like where you're trying to work with an industry, where we are trying to build something for a specific industry. It could be industry 4.0. It could be any of the industry, right? End of the day, there's a problem, there's a challenge, there is a design requirement where you start solving the problem by putting together a set of services and then try to build on that. So what's a project definition? A project definition could include something like as some business objectives. We're not going detail into that because I just want to focus hands on this class more than really looking at very theoretical concept, right? So, but a very broadly, project definition could be a business objectives like what is the latency, cost, how do you modernize the apps? It could be about what is the scope of work, okay, what is the high level architecture, what is the timelines, success criteria. Okay. And then once you have what that project is all about, you could put something like a workload, okay, where an application or a service or an infrastructures, networking, security, all this you put together to really solve the problems. The actual running system, you could think about like a workload, but some planning kind of an activity is like a project. Project could be a planned piece of work. It's an executing initiative, scoping, planning, budgeting. But when it comes to AWS, when you're looking at it from a implementation perspective, the workload becomes the running system. It could be business functionality, etc. Some examples could be like you're doing a migration project from an on-premise to AWS. Okay. And then the workload, the project is nothing but migrating an on-premise ERP to AWS, but the workload exactly should be the ERP system, which is running on EC2 or RDS or an S3 or a VPC after migration. Another example in today's world is how you want to create a customer support chatbot. That could be a project. You could use a workload like Bedrock Model API plus Lambda backend plus DynamoDB chat summary to make it. Okay. So this is some examples what you can think about. If you take one more example, if you want to do a data analytical project, you want to build a real-time analytical pattern, you could use, for example, a workload like Kinesis, Lambda, S3, Redshift, Pipeline, etc. So fundamentally, if you are an architect, you must know that there is a project which comes, there is a workload, and understanding them really well really will help you in the career. There are a lot of resources available for learning this, but broadly, this is a very important topic. So now let's share the screen and understand this little more from a practical perspective. So if you really look at this is our AWS console, okay? And if you come to this console, you will see that all these services has been grouped here. Now, if I have to make it very simple for all of you, you can divide these services into two different logical approach. Again, whatever I'm telling is by my point of view from my experience on the ground more than what is being put across in general publications, right? So if you really see, if you look at as a beginner, you could either go for a 6 months free trial with some credits, or you might be using a production instance. It doesn't matter. Okay, all roads will lead to the same place. So you'll find something here when you log into the AWS console. And when you log in into this console, you would see that there are different names written at the left hand side. So if you can logically think about, there are two kinds of services which are grouped. Now, this has been done by the product management team who build this console for you. But as an architect, I really don't care about what are the things which are listed like this in this order, because I'm going to get a project from my customer. Based on that, I should know which of these 230 plus services is going to cater. So that is the reason I just told you in the previous lesson that as an architect, broad knowledge is very important. Strategically trying to look at the continuous way how you can connect them together is very, very important. So coming back, how do you logically divide this 230 plus services? You can look at it like a foundation service, you can look at it as a specialized service, right? Now, workload will come generally under the specialized service, but foundation service is going to be there for every project. Imagine there will be no project which will not run without a storage or a compute or a networking or a security. They become foundation service. So, if you are a beginner in AWS watching this course, go and learn about Cloud Practitioner Essentials. You will be able to get a good foundation about the foundation service. If you are very new to AI and you want to take a career in AI, Gen AI, ML, machine learning, deep learning, you can look at an AIP, AI Practitioner, which will get you an AI first kind of course. The CPE is the cloud first course from AWS. AIP is the AI first course. You combine them, you will understand what I'm talking about, the foundation service. But typically, a project will fall under a specialized service. For example, if I really just give me a second, let me just look at explaining this to you from a perspective about how you can look at it from a differently from a perspective about the different services here. You can look at like there is something called analytics. Now imagine analytics is a specialized service which you can think about, right? So let me just annotate this so that you can understand this little more. I'm going to click this once more. So you can see that when you're talking about clicking this, okay, and then if I just go and annotate this, okay, you can see that there is something called analytics. Now, this analytics is a specialized skill. Now, the challenges with an architect is you could find resources who specialize in analytics and do a lot of work. But as an architect, you might have a project where there is an analytic, there's an AI, there's an ML, there is some bit of quantum computing where you're using something else. It could have multiple components, but analytics is a specialized service. So as a workload, you can think about like analytics can be a specific section you want to focus. When it comes to whenever I'm putting a wrong, application integration could be a space where we are talking about the foundation service. Blockchain could be a specialized service. Now you just have to understand a project comes to you. Every project will require foundation service like integration, compute, storage, but they will be in one of the workload or a domain. Okay, it could be something like analytics, it could be blockchain, etc. Business applications again a facilitator. Okay, financial management is basically on the field of foundations. Compute is a foundation. You'll see container is a foundation. Customer enablement is a foundation. Database is a foundation. You'll see a lot of these tools fall under the category. But when you go into game development or IoT, you go to machine learning, they become specialized service. So you can always categorize the services into two different types. One is a type which we call as the foundation service, and other is basically called as your specialized service. You can see storage, security, okay, networking, the media, the management, governance, all comes under the foundation service. Let me put this in a very simple way. Tomorrow, if you get a project from your customers, it could be in anything. It could be coming from one of the domain like analytics, and it will cover a lot of the foundation service which is required to run the project. So always you should understand your foundation will have to be learned first before you get into a project. That project can fall under any of the workloads. So why is this important? Because when you use any tools with AWS well architected framework or any of your design patterns, you should know this simple definition because this is not well documented. So when you come into the AWS console, there could be 230 plus service if possible, right? I just challenge this to you. If you can remember all the services within AWS, it might take you 1 to 2 weeks just to click each of one of them and know what each one of them is doing. Broadly, that's a well invested time of yours. Okay, how it will help, I'll talk about that later. But end of the day, it's important as an uh, overall architect piece to really know different services. Coming back to the topic, we are talking about the understanding about a workload and understanding about a project, right? So and the difference between them and relating that on the screen. So if you are an architect in AWS, projects could come from customers, right? For example, if I just take an example, right, if you go to the AWS customer studies, right? So you'll see that there are a lot of customers who have done several project success stories here with AWS, right? Now, what you should understand is each of the success stories, how did they start? They started with a customer throwing a challenge or a salesperson going and prompting some important questions and that related to a project. So we're talking about that business problem. All these customers, which is listed here, you can go yourself to this and search. So it's very important for you. That's how the project started. That's a piece of work. It could be an initiative, it could be a long term plan, it could be a plan, budget, success criteria. It could be used by most of the people like PMs, architects, sales, AWS partners. But when it comes to workload, you become very specific on how you're going to actual run the system. So an architect has to balance these two. You can't just tell that I just know these services. You must understand the requirement, translate that into what workloads or what services on the ground is important to build that. Okay, so that's a really important piece I just wanted to highlight in this lesson. Just know about the difference between projects, workloads, learn about all the AWS services, learn about some of the customers who are doing different projects, and which would help you to think like an architect. Thinking like an architect doesn't mean that you just know some tools and some techniques and draw some diagrams, just to get an overall perspective of things. Okay, with that, we'll see you in the next video.